Hi, this is Tom Needham, and you are listening to the Sounds of Film. And I'm very excited today to be speaking with Amy Nicholson. She's a New York based filmmaker and a commercial director whose projects often explore the essence of Americana with a humorous eye and a warm respect for her subject. Some of her films that she's known for include, among others, Zipper, Coney Island's Last Wild Ride, and Muskrat Lovely. Her films have played at the Hamptons International Film Festival, Doc NYC, and Hot Docs, among a lot of other ones. And her latest film, Happy Campers, is the opening night film for the Port Jefferson Documentary Film Festival. Happy Campers chronicles the final days of a working class summer colony in a scrappy trailer park that just happens to hold the secret to a rich life. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today on The Sounds of Film.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. What first drew you to the inlet view and inspired you to create Happy Campers?
Well, I grew up in Maryland, but I was drawn there I was taking pictures one winter, just kind of wandering around when, Chincoteague Island gets very quiet in the winter, because it's really, a summer vacation place. And I wandered into the campground and I just fell in love with the houses. And the houses are basically RVs that have been parked. Most of them never move again. And then people start to build things on them. So they start to add, little gardens and side houses and screened in porches and a lot of them had the people's names on them, so it would say like Tom and Mary or, like Barb and Lou. And I just thought, wow, this is so great. They're all 10 feet apart. This place must be a riot in the summer. And many, many summers later, I went back and it was fantastic. And I decided to move in.
And a lot of times when you watch a documentary, you get moved by the message of the film. And the second I started watching this movie, I was like, I wish I could go to this place. It was very persuasive, but I do understand not everyone in life would have that impression if they just went there. Some people loved it, some people didn't. Um, Tell us about those different kinds of views and why you decided to make it seem like just the best place on earth.
Well, it was the best place on earth, so I didn't really have to make it seem that way. But the film does start out by leaning into some of the stereotypes of those types of places, which in this case is a family campground that is pretty much a trailer park. Operates primarily during the summer, but there were some people who lived there year round. Um, but it was rough around the edges. It was really rough around the edges. And, you kind of had to do a lot of things yourself. You had to maintain your own property, even though you were renting. And not everybody, maintains to the same level. But the film starts out with some of the stories of people's first impression, because my first impression was, what have I done? And I think a lot of people have that same feeling when they go in, but it doesn't really take too long before your mind is changed. So I focused very heavily, John Young and I actually, who was the editor, on changing that perception within the first act of the film.
And it works. Tell me what you liked best about being there.
The people. And I did interview, everyone who speaks on camera, gave me a very lengthy interview. We cut them down to just the stories that had the most, um, I guess, the most, memory or heartfelt feeling in them. So there were very few stories at the end, on our last cut, but everybody gave me a very lengthy interview about what it was really like there, because I had only been there a couple years when it closed, and some of those people had been there 40 years.
Hmm.
So every time I asked them what's the best thing about this place, they would say the people, and I just would roll my eyes, but it's so true. The people were the best.
That's great. Tell me a little bit about the process of making this film. I understand you did a lot
I
yourself.
did everything. I bought a camper and fixed it up and moved in. And then I got a shed that I used as my production office. I got a garden cart that I used to carry my equipment around. And I got a Black cinema pocket cam. And those are great. And you can shoot, as a one-man band with them. And then I learned how to record sound. And then at night, I would go back to my camper and I had a laptop and a whole bunch of drives, and I would transfer all the footage at night. It was a little crazy. It was a little overwhelming at first, but I got better as the summer wore on.
It's a beautiful looking film. Tell me about the style of the visuals of the film.
Well, the style came out of two things. Number one, just what I was able to shoot on my own. But the other was, I didn't move a lot. I mean, I was really, I was a newbie to that camera at the beginning of the process. So I had to learn everything. I had to learn to pull focus. I had to learn to, um, change lenses on the fly. I had to learn everything. And life does not stop for you. You have to keep up with it. So it was a little bit of a challenge at first. So some of it was really just, I paid very close attention to framing because that was kind of my ace in the hole for maintaining a consistent look. And also because the place had so many great um, vistas and wide shots and just, shots of the water and just shots of people. And so that part was pretty easy, but it was also, but because it was hard to move around, and because I was doing everything on the fly, I was very aware of how I was shooting, and what I was doing was just like riding, going around with my garden cart, like pulling my equipment behind me. And when I would see something, I would stop and shoot it. And so what that meant was I had a lot of little shots and not a lot of scenes. I didn't have a lot of whole scenes.
Mm.
So it was very, very tricky to edit, but we stuck with it. And what we ended up in the edit is what I hope it feels like to be there, where you can just wander from place to place, stop at any campfire, stop and visit with any neighbor, just stop and watch the sunset. Like it should feel the way it feels to be there in that trailer park.
So that is really what it's like. People do mix and mingle and hang out and eat together and just join other people. It's that great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there were only a few yards that had fences around them. And all the yards are, back to back to back. And the only reason some people put a fence up is if they had a dog and they didn't want the dog to run off. But most of them did not have fences. So regularly in the morning, several people would cross my yard, and of course they would stop and talk. So, it was just, you could walk across the front of all of these, lots and just kind of pause and talk to whoever. And then at night, if you saw a campfire, you could walk up. As long as you brought a chair and your own beer, you could stop and hang out with anybody. And then there was an epic horseshoe court in the middle of the campground. And because it was right in the middle, everybody could hear the clink. And so when I heard the clink, I would put the camera in the buggy and go over there because I knew there would be a bunch of people there watching and cheering people on. And it was always fun and funny. And so,
That's
yeah, so it
great.
was, it was kind of a great place to shoot.
I was going to say, like, you've been all over the world in festivals all over the planet, and you've been out to the Hamptons International Film Festival. And, if you're successful in film, you get to live in places or visit places where they have, beautiful multi-million dollar homes and developments on the water, private beaches, that sort of thing. And a lot of people aspire to that. What did you find? I know you talked about the people, but what is special about a place like this versus, having a private, spectacular waterfront mansion or something like that? I'm sure you've seen everything in life. What's great about this, and why is it maybe disappointing that places like this are disappearing?
Great question. Um, because it doesn't cost anything. Our rent was so cheap. And, like I said, you kind of had to maintain your place. You had to, apply for the right codes if you wanted to add an addition or a shed or, a dock or whatever. It was very do it yourself. And also, it was kind of rough. It was kind of a rough place. So you had to make the best of it. And it attracted a certain kind of person. And the reason I thought it was such a shame that this type of place would be taken over by people with better means. I mean, that's what happens is like the people with more money win, and it doesn't matter what level it's
Hmm.
at, whether it's, you know, um, at the tippy top of the 1% or somewhere down in the 18 and 19%. So it doesn't matter where it is. There's always one level above you that gets to have the thing that you discovered and you worked really hard to make the best of. And I hate that. I
Yeah.
hate that's how society is. It drives me crazy. And I was really angry when we left, when we all had to pack up and leave, because I loved my place so much and I'd worked so hard on it. I can only imagine how the people who had been there for generations felt.
Mm.
Um, but I think that's also what made it special. So, there's a point in the film where a woman reads a poem, and the poem was all about being grateful. And to a man, every person I talked to said, yeah, it really sucks that we have to leave. But boy, was I lucky to have it for as long as we had it.
Wow.
And that was a huge life lesson for me because I thought, wow, they're leaving with their dignity. And that's what made this place great. So they can put mansions here, they can make it look like the Hamptons. It doesn't matter. It will never be the same. And that's why I wanted to capture it on film because that's what made it special.
One last question. I know we have to wrap this up. Near the end of the film, you play an old song. This is the Sounds of Film radio show. We play a lot of soundtrack music, and you play a classic from Bread. Can you tell us about the song and why you decided to end the film with that song?
Well, Laura Israel was also one of the editors, and she and I picked out that song really very, very early on in our process. And our process for editing was years long. Um, and for a long time, we didn't have it in there, and we came back to it because it had the right emotional tone. It was the exact right feeling for the end of the movie. And it's really about lost love, but if you look at the lyrics, it really applies to that place and the emotion of that time when it was being torn down and we would never be able to go back. So, spoiler alert. But yeah, we picked that out early on, and we came back to it so many times, and in the end, that was the winner. I mean, it's really hard to pick the exact right thing for your end credits, but that was the one. And then beautifully re-recorded by the sea and the sea.
Very beautiful. Amy, amazing film. I love this film. It's one of my favorites. If people want to learn more about this film, if you're listening locally, you may get an opportunity to see it at the Port Jefferson Documentary Film Festival. But if people miss that screening, where else can they maybe see it or can they learn about your movie?
Well, the website is happycampers.film, and all of our socials are at happycampersdoc, DOC. So if you want to know more about the campground and whose birthday it was yesterday or whose anniversary it was last month, our Facebook page has become, a proxy for the community. So it's kind of fun to flip through there. But yeah, definitely follow us if you want to. And check out the website. And also, we will be on Apple on September 10th.
Fantastic. I want to highly recommend Happy Campers. Amy, really a pleasure to speak with you, and good luck with the film.
Thank you, Tom. I'll see you I'll see you in a week or two.
Sounds good. Take it easy. Bye bye.